So again, welcome to the Zero to Lab class, Pathway to the CCIE. So this class is actually created specifically, or this particular course has been created specifically to actually bridge the gap of practicing. What happens is that in CCIE level, you have so much content which you go through step by step, and sometimes it becomes overwhelming to just go through the concepts and then also keep a tab on practicing everything, right? So you need hands-on as well while you are going through your journey. So when you do it on your own, sometimes you lack time or you lack motivation to actually go through the labs as well. So that's why we created this program where we will have the weekly Zoom sessions. And in these Zoom sessions, I'm going to use a structure where I will explain a particular technology, and I will also solve the lab for that. And then in the same Zoom session, you are also going to configure that lab. And once it is done, you can send me the outputs on the email with your configuration. So that way, you don't need to find time somewhere else in your day or some other time where you need to do the lab on your own. You will be doing it with me. And since I have just done the same lab, it will be very fresh in your memory. So you can actually, along with the conceptual knowledge that you will get and the practical knowledge that you will get, it will become easier to follow the lab on evenly. So that was the basic idea for every technology that we are going to cover. And these are the single protocol labs. And later, of course, we will have the exam like for multi-protocol labs as well. And there also we will use the same formula where we make sure that I explain you the concepts, the fundamentals, then I do the lab, and then you just follow and do the lab again. The reason we are doing this is the objective is to learn, right? To understand, to grasp, and to practice. We are not testing you with giving you the labs every week. So don't worry. You don't need to immediately remember everything, and you don't need to do the lab without looking at the solution. That's not the objective. The objective here is to have a paradigm shift, and don't test yourself every time. Actually practice and have a mindset of learning. So when you are doing the lab, I'll also provide you the solution file beforehand. So you can definitely go and refer to the solution file. And if you are doing it during the week, sometime you get some time and you want to do the lab again, definitely feel free to refer to the solution file. Make sure you are doing everything correct. If you get stuck somewhere, check solution file. What is the configuration? And if you don't understand something into the solution file, or you don't know why the answer is the way that it is, you can definitely get in touch with me also, either on our Facebook group we have or on email. And I will be more than happy to help you in that part, right? But before all these things, we need to understand what is the structure of this course and what is expected in the exam, what is the structure of the exam, and how we are going to go through, and what is expected from you guys, right? So let's go through that. And then, of course, if you have any more questions, we can take the questions after the presentation. So today we just have the presentation introduction, and you will get some time to set up your EVNG if it is not already set up, and make sure that it is ready for the practicals that we will do every day, right? So let's get started. So the very first thing, what is the course structure here? So we have 2 days a week uh, classes. So you can see that the invitation that I have sent you, it's into the Bangkok time zone. So that's why it shows Monday and Tuesday, 9 to 11 a.m. But don't worry, it's actually GMT plus 7. So you need to change it to your local time zone wherever you are. If you are back in US, let's say in LA, it is actually GMT minus 8. So 15 hours behind of Bangkok time. So you can just convert it, and it should be around 6 p.m. on Saturday, sorry, 6 p.m. on Sunday, right? So depending on where you are, or if you are back in New York, I think it will be 3 p.m. Monday. So you can actually change it, because the reason we have kept it for Bangkok time is that throughout the year, the time doesn't change in Bangkok. So there is no daylight saving time or time shift like 1 hour ahead or behind. So we keep the class time consistent. And then whenever there's a daylight saving time changes, like in March or November, when it happens twice a year, right, in back in US or in UK, you can actually change it according to the class timing. So we will have 2 days every week. The live Zoom session, it will be 2 hours per day. So, for example, the classes are 2 hours, so 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. If we think about LA time zone, or 9 to 11 a.m. in Bangkok. And out of these 2 hours, the first 1 hour, it is going to be instructor-led lab configuration. So this is where I'm going to explain you the topic, and also I'm going to solve a particular lab. For example, if today's topic is BGP, and BGP is a big topic. So we might have multiple days and multiple labs. So let's say we are on the introduction day. So I'll introduce you to the BGP, make sure that you understand how BGP works and what are the important factors of BGP. And then I'm going to configure the lab, step by step, solve the lab. And after the 1 hour is finished, when I'm done, sometimes it might take less than 1 hour, sometimes more than 1 hour because it depends on the content, right? If we are doing, for example, CDP or LLDP labs, Cisco Discovery Protocol, it's very simple concept. We start slow. So it might be done in 30 minutes or 30, 40 minutes. But sometimes it might take more than that. Like if we are talking about MPLS L3 VPN, then I might need to explain you more things. And some days might be completely theory because you do need a theoretical background before you can jump to the configuration part. And the next day will be the lab part. So it is just a general structure I'm telling you right now. 1 hour instructor lab configuration, and then the later second hour, participants need to configure the same lab and then send me the result on email. So this is a topic-driven course. It's not the time-driven course, right? So don't worry. It's not exactly going to be 1 hour like clockwork. And if I'm in the middle of explaining something very important, I'm not going to stop it just because my 1 hour is finished and you have to start practicing now. No, we don't do the things that way, right? We want to make sure that the concepts are very clear, and then we move to the configuration part. So in some days, if we have to go through the theory completely 2 hours, I will do that. And the next day can be the configuration part where I do the lab first and then you just follow and do the same lab, right? So this will make sure that when we go through this course and when we go through all the important technologies, layer 2, layer 3, uh, uh, VPN technologies, SD-WAN, SDA, programmability. So whenever we go through these technologies, you will not only gain the knowledge, but also you will do the practical right away. So there is no worry about finding the time somewhere else to do the practical. Of course, if you do have time, you can do the same labs again few times during the week. It's good. It will solidify your understanding, but that is just optional, right? And once the lab is done, you can send me the show commands output via email, or you can just send me the show running config of all the devices, maybe like in a notepad file, or you can create a PDF file. The idea is that I will just check that if your configuration is correct, and if everything is good, I will not reply anything because we are going to do this every week. But if I see something wrong or some configuration which I would like to correct, I will just reply to that email and will let you know where you can actually improve or what parts you made some mistakes so that you can fix them and next time you don't do the mistake, right? But don't worry, you will also have the solution file so that you can use also to fix any issues that you have, right? You can also contact me anytime regarding the solution file. If you don't understand something, why the solution is the way it is, or you have a different approach to solve the question, but I have solved it in a different way, discuss with me because definitely there may be more than one ways to do something. Or maybe I may have to tell you something about CCIE exam structure that you cannot do it this way, you have to do it this way. So it's always good that if you don't understand the solution or you have a different solution, you can definitely get in touch with me. Either during the week, you can do it using Facebook group or sending me an email, or during the session, of course, you can discuss this in the Q&A session part, right? So this is what I'm saying. If solution file is not clear, ask instructor. You can ask me. So how can this program help? So as I mentioned earlier, most of the times when we see the CCI boot camps, when we were creating this program, we saw that we had a very, very good program, and we do have a very, very good program, a very detailed CCI program called Zero to CCIE, but it is a pre-recorded program. So it covers everything you need to know to going forward for the exam. It actually gives you very in-depth knowledge of all the technologies. But the issue was that when people do it on their own, because it's the recorded sessions, you get the recordings, and it's now up to you when you watch it and then you do the lab or not. So nobody is watching over you, nobody is making you responsible. So it becomes slightly difficult to keep the motivation going when you do it on your own. So we thought that's a great product and it's a very successful product of ours. But we wanted to create something similar, but where we also have the participation from your side or participants involvement, because we want to make sure you do the lab every week. Now, when we saw other programs which are out there, mostly the CCI boot camps are like 7 days boot camps or 10 days boot camps where you pay $5,000 to $7,000. And what happens is that all the technologies, layer 2, layer 3 VPN technology, QoS, multicasting, SD-WAN, SDA, programmability. All these things are explained within 5 days or 7 days, and it's like 8 to 10 hour sessions every day. And you don't get time to grasp everything, especially if you have not been practicing for a long time, and you don't get time to practice anything, right? Right? Not only you will not be able to understand it, but won't have any time to practice. And of course, if so much information is coming to you within a very short period, it's very difficult to come up with questions. And when you come up with the questions, the class is already closed long time ago. So we wanted to create something like slightly spaced out for serious people who really want to get their certification and really want to have a good chance of passing the exam, right? So that's why this program is 24 weeks. That means it will be a 6 months program, not 5 days or 7 days boot camp. And whenever we cover technologies, like we have 2 days every week, so we cover enough technology so that if you want to learn more, you can just actually watch the video again, do the labs few more times during the week. And also, if you are a working professional, which most of us are, it's not overburdening. So you don't need to do so much work that you have to take off from your working and anything. You can still do it in your off time, right? So you will see that the structure of this program is this way. So the main thing missing in a lot of programs is practice. Like if you go for boot camps also, you don't practice. You just get the information within 5 to 7 days. And even when you practice, it is something you did not understand properly, or it was so fast, you don't regain it. So its practicing part was missing there. So this program addresses this issue. And we use the following plan for this. So all the single protocols labs will be configured and explained by me, followed by the configuration of the candidates, means by you. So this is something we already talked about. And detailed solution files for the practice labs, so you can actually refer to them as well. Q&A sections to clear any doubts. We want to make sure that anytime you have any question, you feel free to ask me, whether in the live session or if it is during the week off timing, then you can send me an email or on the Facebook group. We also cover the newer topics which were added to CCIE. So before in CCIE, it was used to be called routing and switching, but now it is called CCIE Enterprise Infrastructure, right? And they have included the software-defined networking, where we have the SD-WAN and SDA. So we do cover both of these topics as well in depth, software-defined WAN and software-defined access, which uses the DNS center. So SD-WAN is the WAN side solution for SDN, and SDA is the LAN side or campus side solution for implementation, right? So we do cover everything that you need to know, and we do have a EVNG lab for SD-WAN also, so you can practice it. You can have a exam-like multi-protocol lab where you will configure everything for SD-WAN. Of course, I'll explain you all the concepts. So if you have no idea about SD-WAN at all, or Cisco implementation of SD-WAN, don't worry, I got you covered. We will make sure that we start from scratch and we understand everything that is needed to be understood. For SDA, the campus side configuration, we also understand all the important concepts. How does it different for? Is it different from SD-WAN, and how to implement it, and how it actually affects your LAN campus environment, right? Apart from this, there is another new addition from the previous CCIE courses or previous CCIE curriculum is programmability and automation. So we make sure that we also cover this also enough so that you can be comfortable in the exam. For example, we have model-driven programmability like RESTconf, NetConf protocols to actually query the devices and get some information or change some information on the devices. So we will see how we can use these programs. For NetConf, how we can use it from the command line, and there are some tools also we can use. Similarly, for RESTconf, how we can use the curl command, or we can use the GUI programs like Postman to actually send and retrieve and send requests to the routers or switches, retrieve information or change some information there. And automation means we are going to cover Python as well. So we will go through the Python's basics. So if you don't know how Python works or you don't know anything about programmability, again, we will start from scratch. But again, this is not a Python course, right? Python is a huge language, and I would say it will need its own 6 month course if you want to learn Python from A to Z, right? And nobody can actually run up to Z. It's a language, so you keep on improving. But we will cover enough so that your basics are clear. You will be comfortable around a Python code, and you will also be able to create some basic Python codes. For example, you can create Python codes to use netconf and restconf to initiate a connection and retrieve the information from the devices. and show you on the terminal. So these kind of things I'm going to show you. We will also cover some other aspects like Python on a box. So on the CSR routers, you can actually run Linux operating system inside your Cisco router, just like a container. And then you can run Python right there and query your local router to get all kind of information or to change the information. We are also going to cover the EEM, embedded event manager, where we can look for any kind of event. For example, if an interface goes down, or if somebody tries to remove BGP configuration, or if a syslog message has appeared, then that can actually trigger a Python program, which is going to do some task, whatever you ask it to do. For example, your router is an edge router, which is configured with BGP, and it's a very, very important configuration. Hundreds of thousands of routes are coming from the service provider side, or you are sending these important routes. You don't want BGP to go down, or you don't want anyone to accidentally delete BGP. So if somebody gains the access to CLI and tries to configure no router BGP command to delete the complete BGP configuration, uh, immediately the EM script or Python can kick in. They will ignore that command, and they can also show a warning message on syslog or record who was the user did it, and maybe send an email to the administrator. So you can see these things can be configured using programmability and automation. So we will cover those things also in enough detail to get comfortable in the CCIE exam, right? And of course, for all these things, we have the full actual exam like multi-protocol labs. So every week when we are going to do the labs that I was talking about, these are the single protocol labs. So because we actually focus on one particular technology, and we make sure that we become very comfortable with it. For example, we start multicasting. So if you have very basic knowledge of multicasting or no knowledge of multicasting, that's okay. We will start from scratch. We make sure that you understand what is multicasting and what are the important practical aspects. And when I show you them, I will also have the one or more labs. Like multicasting is also a big topic, so there might be more than one labs. And these are single protocol labs because only concentrating on multicast or MPLS or GRE or DMVPN. So you can see that the specific topic-based labs are single protocol labs. But then, of course, when you go for the exam, and I will show you the exam structure in a few minutes, you will see that you have a single topology where you start configuring layer 2, and then on the top of layer 2 you configure layer 3. On the top of that you configure DMVPN and MPLS L3 VPN. Some QoS multicasting configuration can also be there. Routing protocols, OSPF, EIGRP, BGP, of course. And then you also configure SD-WAN, SDA, and programmability. So the single lab or the same topology is used to configure all these things. So there will be a single PDF file, single lab file, where the instructions will be to start configuring the lab step by step with all these different technologies combined. That's why it is called multi-protocol lab. And we will do the multi-protocol lab practice here as well, so that you become very comfortable that how exactly Cisco asks question, what is the structure of the lab. And we do use the real exam topology because Cisco actually doesn't hide the topology they are using in CCIE Lab. It's not a designing lab, so they don't want you to understand the design overnight or within the exam. So the topology is revealed by Cisco, so we use the same topology. So you will be very, very familiar with the topology that they are using in the exam. The questions, of course, might change, but again, that's the beauty of this program. You will have in-depth knowledge of everything and the practice. So you will have enough acumen to, if they change the question slightly, like in BGP or an OSPF or SD-WAN, you will be able to handle that and change the configuration accordingly, right? So I'll also give you the troubleshooting tips depending on which protocol we are talking about. Like in OSPF, if the neighborship is not coming up, what could be the reasons and how we can actually fix it. Same thing for EIGRP or BGP or any other routing protocol. And of course, my support will be there throughout the course duration. So in the live Zoom session, you can definitely ask any questions. While I'm presenting, I always mute students. So you can send me the message into the chat. So you don't need to wait for the session to end. Let's say if you have a specific question right now, let's say I'm teaching OSPF and you don't understand a particular part and you don't want to wait until the class ends. So you can immediately send me a message into the chat and I will read your question so that everyone else also knows in case if you have sent it privately, and then I'm going to answer that question right there. Plus, when the session is done, I will allow you guys to unmute again, and you can also ask questions that time. So the Q&A goes throughout the duration of 2 hours of live Zoom session. It's not just at the end, right? Second thing, if there is no live sessions, let's say if it is Tuesday or Wednesday, and we don't have a live session now, we have on Sunday and Monday. So you can definitely get in touch with me with your question. And if it's a technical question, if you can be more specific, the more specific you are, the quicker and better understanding I will have, and I will be able to answer you. For example, if you are getting stuck somewhere into the configuration and the solution file doesn't help, you can send me the screenshot of exactly the problem and the description, and I'll be more than happy to help there, right? So all this, and the cherry on top is that you have the lifetime access to the class recordings. So class recording means all the technological topics that we are going to do, those will be available to you throughout the uh, throughout. So basically, it's lifetime access. So you can actually watch them anytime, even 5 years down the line. If you want to watch it again, you will have the access. And the good thing is that we always keep it updated. So if in case CCI structure changes and few new topics are added or some topics are removed, we make sure that we update our curriculum according to that, and you will get the new information there for you as well, right? So you will get the access to that for free of charge. It's not that something new added later you won't get it. No, since you are part of the Zero to Lab program, you can actually get the access to newer things if we add them, just like our existing or new students as well, right? One thing you need to remember though is that the class recordings that you will see, they might be different from our existing classes. So we actually have Zero to Lab classes already, many classes already done, many successful classes also done. So we actually have the class recordings from the very first class that we had. So for example, this is the fifth class we have for Zero to Lab. So we have the recordings from first class. So let's say if I'm teaching OSPF and you want to watch the recording again, when you go watch, it will be from the first class, not from this class. So it might be slightly different in the sense that my the way I start, or maybe the question that I ask will be different, but the content will be same. The idea is that you, if you want to refresh your knowledge about OSPF and you want to watch the video again, you will see that you have the same content there. It's not that there is anything different or anything new or less or more. It is the same thing, but it will be recording from the earlier classes, right? And second thing is that you, if you have purchased Zero to CCI as well, then of course you have the wealth of information there. It's a very detailed pre-recorded session, so you can watch. Let's say if you are feeling particularly less comfortable with MPLSL3 VPN and you want to go through it again, so definitely you can watch the recording from our Zero to Lab sessions, which will be more than enough. You don't need Zero to CCI, but just in case if you are like me, who the more knowledge is better, you can just go there and watch those videos as well, which are also very in-depth, right? So you can see that in this program, it's very watertight. You have basically everything that you need to start understanding things and practicing without investing more time out of this live Zoom session. You can do everything right here. So what tools are we using for this? So the tools that we use, as I have already sent you guys the email about EVNG. So I have sent you an OVA, which actually contains the pre-set up topologies that we will be using. And of course, when you use EVNG, what happens is it's an emulator where you can, it's actually a CentOS Linux. So you have to actually find the routing, switching, and other images from internet. Or if you have a Cisco account, you actually download from there. Then you need to copy it using some client, some SCP client or TFTP, sorry, SFTP client to the Linux EVNG system, and then you have to install the licensing, and then it will be available into the GUI, so that you can drag and drop the switches and routers and connect them and start using them, right? So to make sure that we take that all out, so you don't waste your time into all these things, I have already done this. So I already have imported all the images, already licensed them, and I have already created the predefined topologies that we will be using throughout our single protocol labs. And then there are different multi-protocol topologies as well. And I have combined everything into an OVA file. So if you have just VMware installed, VMware workstation or VMware workstation player, player is the free version, right? So if you have that installed, you just need to open the OVA there, import the OVA, and you will be all set. So what will happen is that topology is already set, and when I send you the lab files every week, I will also mention the very first line that open this topology or open that topology. So you know exactly which topology you need to work on in EVNG. And our solution file will be there along with that. So by the way, on during the off days also, you are encouraged to do the labs again, and feel free to contact me in case of any question. But in the case of EVNG, you will see that the OVA file that I'm going to send you, or either I already sent you, you can import it and make sure it is ready before we start doing the practical part, right? So this week is still, you have time, because today is just the introduction. And tomorrow we are going to talk about subnetting. I know subnetting is something you already know from CCNA and then in CCNP and CCI, but the basics of subnetting we will talk. And also we will see the first topic. So these are very smaller topics. Let's say even if we start with CDP or LLDP, very simple topics. So you don't need immediately these things. You do have this whole week to make sure you set up everything and be ready. So from next week, when we start the more serious labs like switching and then later routing, you have everything set up, right? So what is the recommendation for RAM in your laptop or desktop, whatever you're using for EVNG? So recommended RAM for the core topics, the routing and switching topics, is 8 gig. And this includes QoS, MPLS, DMVPN, multicasting. All these you can do very comfortably if you have 8 gig RAM. But for SD-WAN, you should have at least 16 gig RAM. That's the minimum. And 32 gig is recommended. That will make things more smooth. But 16 gig also will work fine. So anything between 16 to 32 gig RAM should be sufficient for SD-WAN practicals. But remember, SD-WAN will come later in the course. So maybe it will be like 3 or 4 months before we reach to SD-WAN. So you do have time for that as well. Initially, we will need the 8 gig RAM for the core topics. So there will be two different OVAs basically. So the OVA that I have sent you is for the core topics right now. That's what we will start, right? But later during the course, somewhere in the middle, I will send you another OVA for SD-WAN so that you can actually check that out as well, right? And see if you have the proper resources to do it. All right, so I see a question from Ryan that my e-files do not work. So what is the issue there? I mean, you have the OVA, right? So when you import the OVA, are you getting any errors, Ryan? So what we can do is, after this class, I have actually other commitments. So what we can do is we can take it on the email. So do one thing. Once this session is done, you can actually try again. And when you see the error, if you can do the screenshot and send me, and maybe it is one of the common errors, then I can just directly help you there. Or otherwise, we can actually set up a session and then I can fix it there. But we have to decide a time later because unfortunately, after this class, I'm a little bit busy. So definitely, I will fix it this week because you will need it from next week. So don't worry about it. But yeah, first send me the screenshot and then we can check it out. What is the issue, right? All right. So after importing the OVA, once it is showing you there into the VMware, make sure you adjust the RAM according to the requirements. And also, you should set the first interface to NAT if not already done. So sometimes it might be different. So when you go to the virtual machine settings, you can press Control D or you can go to the file and settings. When you go to the hardware, it shows you how much RAM you have, memory. You can see in the memory, we can select how much we want, like 8 gig, 16 gig. So make sure that how much you have, you give it less than that. Don't take all the memory. It might actually make your system unstable. And also the network adapter, the first one should be set to NAT, right? So that will actually make sure you get the stable IP address every time you boot the EVNG. So when I go to the EVNG, let's see, this is the 02 lab EVNG. When you boot it first time after importing OVA and setting the interface to NAT and everything, it will actually boot the operating system, the Linux operating system, and it will leave you at this screen. And as you can see on this screen, it is asking you the login information. But apart from this, it is also telling you the IP address for the GUI, which is you can see use HTTP 192.168.79.137. Now this IP will be different for you because it depends on your local system configuration. So you need to actually open this IP into the GUI. So doing practice or labs every week, you will just need access to this IP address, right? You don't need to log in here into the CLI of your EVNG. For some basic purpose, like if you want to properly shut down your lab, if you are done, if you want to properly shut down your 02 lab EVNG, then you can log in here. And username is root. And the password you can see here, it directly says in the very first line, EVNG default root password is EVE. That's the password, EVE. And when you press enter, you will be in. And you can use this command, shutdown dash H space now. This command is going to shut down your complete EVNG. So whenever you are done, and you want to shut down the machine, don't just shut down like clicking here across and say just power off. This might actually sometimes corrupt the database of EVNG, and then you might have to import the OVA again. So just to avoid that, if you're done with the labs and you really want to shut it down, you can actually first close all the devices into the GUI, and then you can come here, log in with the root and EU, and then just type shutdown that dash dash space now and press enter, and it will be properly shut down, right? But again, as I told you, most of the time you don't need to log in. Just note down the IP address, and then you just need to go to that IP address like 137. And the very first screen that you get is the login screen, where again the password is same Eve, but instead of root, the username is admin. So for GUI, the username is admin and password is Eve, same password as the CLI. You log in, and you will actually get the lab something like this. So for example, these are different topologies that I have preset, right? So if you, let's say I'm sending you a lab for multiple span tree protocol. So I will actually tell you in that PDF, the very first line, open the MST lab 1. So you can see here MST lab 1. You will click on that, and you will click on open, and then this is the lab that you are going to use. And we do have a video on our Zero to Lab portal. You already must have access to that. The one of the first videos is the EVNG setup, where I explain exactly how to set up EVNG, how to import OVA, how to use your Windows client pack, so that you can actually start the devices and directly click on it and open putty or super putty to start accessing the device. So this is something you can also check that video this week and make sure everything is set up. Uh, but once you get the access like this, you just need to see the PDF that I send you, that which topology I'm asking you to open, right? So these are single protocol topologies. Mostly for the routing part, we will be using the base lab. The base lab, you will see that has a routing infrastructure here. And in this routing infrastructure, we are using 8 routers, and we will be configuring different protocols and policies and all the PBR, IP, SLA routing protocols on this base lab, right? For switching, we have different labs, and I will tell you in the PDF itself, like Open STP Lab 1 or STP Lab 2 or VLANs, VTP, SPAN, RSPAN, or MAC addresses, Ether channel. So I will let you know which one you need to open. And then when we are done with the single protocol labs, there are around 50 single protocol labs. Then we will go to the multi-protocol lab, CCIE multi-protocol lab. So this one is something that we will get once we are done with all the important technologies, right? Routing, switching, VPN, DMVPN, QoS, multicasting. Core technologies are done, not the software-defined networking technology, right? So here you will see that this is the full protocol lab, where we have headquarter, data center, internet connectivity, and then we have 2 branches, branch 3 and branch 4, which is connected using the service provider number 1. The reason I'm calling them branch 3 and 4 is because branch 1 and 2 are SD-WAN branches, SD-WAN and SDA. So in EVNG, it will become too big, and you might not be able to support it with just 16 or 32 gig RAM. So we keep it separate. We just keep the core technologies or topologies here in the first lab, multi-protocol lab 1. And if you go to multi-protocol lab 1 diagram, you will see the same diagram in the PDF. I will send you with the diagram with all the images. Everything you will get properly here, what interfaces you need to use and how they are connected, right? And then the multi-protocol lab itself will have all the details, like what do you need to configure and where this needs to be configured, right? So if you go to one of the requirements, for example, OSPF version 2 between headquarter and data center, it will tell you what needs to be done, and accordingly there will be a solution as well here. So you can actually try it first, and then you can check the solution, because at that time you will already have good knowledge of OSPF or any other technologies that we are going to do, right? For SD-WAN, as I mentioned already, I will send you a separate OVA later, maybe after 2 or 3 months. And this SD-WAN OVA will actually use multi-protocol lab 2, right? So in this one, we are going to use a different diagram also, as you can see. Here we have branch 1 and branch 2 and connecting to the data center. So here, if you see, we do have vBond, vSmart, vManage, and then VHS, right? So VH21 and 22. And then in branches, we have different VHS as well. So we are using the SD-WAN technology to connect or enable communication between all the locations. And that's exactly how we are going to see it. So don't worry, we will understand all the topics and logic first before we get to this part, right? So speaking about CCIE blueprint, you will see that in CCIE, we have the core topics like network infrastructure, where we actually go through some basics of switching. So we are going to cover the basics of switch administration, layer 2 protocols, VLAN, Ether channel, spanning tree protocol. So they have kept switching very simple now in CCIE level. They have removed all the flex VPN and all the other fancy stuff. They have kept it very simple. In the routing, you can see that we have the EIGRP main protocol, OSPF version 2 and version 3, PGP, and multicast is there, right? So multicasting is also multicast routing, basically we'll cover there, right? And then comes the software defined infrastructure, where we will go through the SDA, which is for the campus network, and SD-WAN for the WAN side network, right? And then the transport technologies basically is your MPLS, DMVPN, GRE tunnels. So these things also will be covered. MPLS L3 VPN is part of the routing and switching exam, infrastructure exam. So we will cover that. And we will see how you can use MPLS using LDP and multi-protocol BGP, MPBGP, VPN v4, and VPN v6. Similarly, DMVPN, we have 3 different phases, and we will see that the latest one, phase 3, how we can configure, and even if we have dual hubs, how we can actually implement this, right? Using the IPsec security as well. And then comes the infrastructure security. So this is something also part of the core, because we will go through network security, AAA, uh, system management, how to use SSH or STP, RESTCON, NetConf, we will cover into programmability part, SNMP, logging, QoS will be a big part, and then network services that we have been doing right from CCNA also, right? Like fast hop redundancy protocol, HSRP, VRP. GLBP is no longer there, as you can see. They have removed GLBP requirement. NTP, DSCP, DNS, and network address translation, IPSLA. These are some of the important things that we are going to cover. Some things like SPAN, RSPAN, I will already cover in the switching part. So these things will also be there, right? And then comes the programmability. So we are going to understand the different data formats. What is the difference? Why do we need data formats? What is the meaning of JSON, XML, YAML, or Jinja 2 actually? And then we will see some EM scripts, Get shell. This is what I was talking about, Python on a box. It is called Linux environment on a Cisco router. We will see that, how to implement it, how to link EM to your Python module. You'll see that as well. And in programmability, we are going to understand how we can use Postman, how we can configure, how we can actually query our vManage, which is the SD-WAN manager, to get this information, right? And the different protocols like RESTConf, NetConf, gRPC, which is Google Remote Procedure Call, the information or the details about these protocols will also be covered, right? So we will cover everything what we need to cover to make sure that we have the information needed to pass the exam. And also we have the multi-protocol labs to practice it enough to become comfortable in the exam. So speaking about exam, what exactly are you expected in the exam? So currently, what's the structure of the exam, and what to expect when you go for that day, where the D day where you actually take the exam, right? So the whole exam is 8 hours, but it's divided into 2 parts. First is the whole lab is 8 hours, which is the practical lab. But before you can go for the lab, you need to pass a qualification exam, which is the CCNP NCore 350-401. And so it's a core exam for CCNP certification, but this also works as a qualification exam, written exam or multiple choice question exam to be able to book the lab. So earlier, what used to happen, there was a dedicated CCI qualification written exam where you need to solve the multiple choice questions, drag and drops. And if you pass that exam, then only you will be able to book the CCIE lab, right? And you had 1.5 years to book the CCIE lab. Otherwise, your CCI qualification certification expires. Now, what happens if you are already preparing for CCNP, or if you are already a CCNP, that means you already are qualified to book the lab. You just need to pass the NCore exam, and NCore exam actually is valid for 3 years. So you will have 3 years to book your CCI lab any date. You can select the date and you can book it, or you can plan it at least that I have 3 years, so how I can want to plan it, or maybe I want to do it in 6 months, 8 months, 1 year. So you can actually plan that. Once you are done with this, you go for the lab exam, and actually the new version is 1.1. So the don't worry, the syllabus I just showed you on PDF, that's actually for 1.1. but the structure is same even for 1.0 and 1.1. So what happens in lab exam? So it's an 8-hour hands-on based exam. It's divided into two parts. So first is the design part. So design part is very similar to your multiple choice question written exam. You will see that it will be 3 hours, but there will be no configuration. You don't actually log into a device and configure it. That's not part of it. It will be MCQs, drag and drops, and other types of questions. Maybe they will show you some kind of output of a show command, and then you have to answer based on that. So if you go through all the topics and all the labs that we have, you will have enough knowledge and conceptual acumen that you will be able to do this part very easily, because this part doesn't require any configuration. And most of the times, what the feedback that I get from many students also and many of colleagues is that 3 hours is actually more than what needed. Mostly people are done this 1 hour and 1 hour to 1.5 hours. They are actually done with the design part. But then comes the big beast: deploy, operate, and optimize. That's where the configuration comes into the picture, and that is the remaining 5 hours of the lab. And this is where you have to configure a topology. So you will have a topology, and you will need to configure the same topology that I just showed you: the branch 1, branch 2, branch 3, branch 4. So 4 branches will be there, and there will be one headquarter, one data center, and there are 3 major sections in the DO part: deploy, operate, and optimize part. The routing switching or the infrastructure. Second is the software defined networking, and third is the programmability. So section 1 will cover your layer 2, layer 3 routing protocols, multicast, QoS, IP services, IP security, and DMVPN, MPLS L3 VPN. All these things will be covered into the first section. That's why the first section is the biggest one. And then the second one is SDN, where you have to implement SD-WAN and SDA for the LAN or WAN side, software-defined networking. And the last section is the smallest one, programmability, where you need to fetch some information from some routers or change some information on the router using either RESTconf or using Python programming. So programmability is the smallest part, but of course very important because it is one of the 3 sections we have. All right, I see a question from Ryan. How many questions on the written exam? So if you are going to take the written exam, which is the CCNP Encore exam, it actually varies. It could be 65 to 70 questions in the exam, and you get 120 minutes to pass the CCNP Encore exam, right? So you have 120 minutes, means roughly you get 1.5 to 2 minutes to solve one question. And there will be multiple choice questions, drag and drop questions, and there might be some simulations as well. Simulations means a smaller topology where you need to click on the device and check some things or configure some things or fix something, right? But those are on very basic levels, not same as the CCIE lab exam, right? So that will be around 65 to 70 questions to answer your question, right? All right. So what will happen in the lab part is that the devices will be partially pre-configured. So when you see the lab in the exam, it will not be completely blank. You don't need to start configuring IP addresses and all, right? Back in the days, like before 1998, CCI used to be 3 days exam, and you had to travel to the location, and you physically actually connect everything from day one. You unbox, you connect, you create the rack, you start from the very physical work, and then second day you configure the layer 2 technologies, and then WAN technologies on day 3. Then they made it 2-day exam after 1998, after introducing CCN and CCNP, and now we know that it's a single day exam. So devices are already pre-configured with something. For example, if you go to the diagram here, let's say multi-protocol lab 1, and you think, okay, I can see here in the data center, I have to configure OSPF area 1, sorry, OSPF 1 area 0. So it doesn't mean that OSPF is not there at all. You will see that OSPF is already configured everywhere, but there might be something missing. Maybe one interface is deliberately not advertised. So you just have to make sure it is also advertised. There should be OSPF neighborships between all the devices. And if a particular network is not advertised, you have to make sure that is advertised. So you have to just fix few things. You don't need to start configuring everything from scratch. There are few exceptions for this. Like there are few technologies you might have to configure right from the start, depending on, like, maybe it is going to be DHCP server configuration, there might not be anything there, and you have to start configuring the pools and assignment. But for example, DMVPN, the tunnels and everything will already be there, but only some things or the other missing from the branches or from the data center, right? So pre-configuration will already be there, which actually does save time. But also, if you don't know what's supposed to be there, what is missing, then it can create issues also. That's why understanding technologies and knowing what's supposed to be there for a particular protocol to work is extremely important. And that's exactly what we are going to address in our classes also. So to make sure you become very comfortable in that aspect, right? So you will need to configure the devices as per the instructions. So again, what happens is that you can't delete anything. You can't get rid of a particular technology. If the diagram is saying that headquarter needs to use OSPF, you can't remove OSPF and configure static routes everywhere to have reachability. Because yes, you will have reachability with static routes also, but you will not get any marks because you removed something which is supposed to be there. So whenever you have to fix an issue in exam, you always try to change some parameter or add something, and you delete only if that is the only way. So if you have to delete something and that is the only way to do something, then you can do it. And in that case also, you don't delete the whole technology like OSPF or BGP. You actually fix few things. Maybe there is a conflicting router ID between two routers. So of course they can't have the same router ID. You will have to change the router ID on one of the system or delete the router ID statement from that system, right? So if you have option to change or delete, always go with change. If you only have the option to delete, if something cannot work without deleting a particular value, you can actually go ahead and delete that value. That's not an issue, right? So these are some common sense things that you will start getting more and more comfortable with once you go through the multi-protocol labs. All right, so what's expected from your side in this course? So we will go through every week through the labs. I will explain you the topology. I will also explain you the concepts, and then I will configure the lab in front of you. But what is expected from your side in this case? So very first thing, let's show up in the Zoom sessions. So we have weekly Zoom sessions now twice every week. So you just have to show up twice a week and make sure that you join the session. Sometimes what happens, you might be not completely on board. Maybe you are saying, okay, I don't understand this completely. I may have to watch this recording again. That's completely fine. But if you just keep on showing up, the consistency will be there, and then you will start grasping more, and you will be into the mode of practicing and preparing yourself, right? So psychologically, you will be better in adapting the new information. Of course, do the labs. So you will have an option to do the lab with me. So once I am done with the lab, I will let you guys know that now you can do the lab. I will be here on the Zoom session. We will stop sharing the screen, but you can do it on your own. You don't need to share any screen or anything. But I will be here in case if you want to ask me any question right there while you are doing the lab. So you don't need to wait for an email or a Facebook group comment, which is good for off season, off part of the session, like during the week. But within the Zoom session, I will be here. So in case if you immediately need an answer while you're configuring the lab, you can ask me. And once that is done, you can send me the solution file. And ask questions. Of course, you are actually encouraged to ask questions, whatever you have. So don't worry. There is no question which is very small or no question very big. Either I know the answer or I don't know the answer. So if I know the answer, I will answer you. If I don't know the answer, we will find the answer, because then we both will know the answer. Ultimately, we want to make sure everything is very clear, right? So in this class, asking questions is encouraged. Don't worry, don't feel that should I ask this or not. No, go ahead and ask. Maybe it's a very simple, basic thing you are asking. Don't worry. You can still ask it. Ask it. There is no question, small or big, right? And be consistent. So not only just in showing up into the Zoom session, if you keep on doing the labs with us, you will not actually fall behind. And although we will have some strategic time off into this class, somewhere around the line, like for example, when layer 2 stuff is done, I'll give you 1 week break in the class. So if you are falling a little bit behind into the labs, you can actually do all the labs and be there. Same thing after the routing part or somewhere after the big topics. But still, if you keep on doing the labs consistently every week, you won't fall behind way further, right? Because we have around 49 to 50 single protocol labs. So it's better to just keep on doing it along with the trainer. That's why we are asking you to do it within the Zoom session, right? Now about myself, if you guys haven't got chance to introduced to me, I have been in the training industry for more than 16 years. And I have more than 11 years of CCI training experience, specifically routing, switching, and service provider. I did my own CCIE routing, switching, and service provider as well, and this is my CCIE number. And I do also perform do some consultation work as well with different service providers and different organizations. So sometimes this is the SD-WAN implementation, maybe Cisco based, maybe Silver Peak, Aruba, maybe some other kind of SD-WAN. Maybe it's the core Juniper implementation where I need to fix some MPLS VPN issues or some routing issues. So this actually gives me more insights about how exactly the implementation works in service providers, in enterprise networks, mostly service providers, because enterprise networks can vary hugely in their implementations depending on their personal approach. But most service providers, they have the structured standard approach. The technologies they're using might be different, but the approach is very similar. For example, if you go for a data center nowadays, mostly it is a spine and leaf topology where they want to scale horizontally. But if you go to a service provider, they would like to use the collapse core or the TTR topology, where they can have clear distinction between where the policies are implemented, where the clients are connected, and where do we have our core to exchange all this data between the client points, right? POPs. So all this information I also try to include into the training so that it becomes relevant and we have some real life examples as well. So that's it for the presentation. Let's get started. Thank you very much. And I'll allow you guys to unmute in case if you have any questions of this. So for tomorrow, we will start. And if you don't have the EVNG setup right now, don't worry, you will need it from next week. But we will make sure that we fix that within this week before we start any practical part, right? So let me allow you guys to unmute.